Good evening. These days, my research scholars are finding very difficult to come and visit me with their research work, the progress which they have made, and they have so many queries. So I thought, let me discuss certain important points and put forward to my students so that they get a guideline how to move, how to carry on with their research work. My dear students, gone are the days where students need to search the library for hours to find the appropriate books that are relevant to their research studies. Today, we are living in a modern digital world where any information can be obtained in a few minutes of time using the World Wide Web, the internet. Today, internet is extensively used and freely available to hundreds of millions of people around the world. India is the third fastest growing market when it comes to broadband connection after China and USA. Students today don't have interest in or patience to read books. This is a very serious matter. This must change and they need to read a lot. Why? Why should they read? The reasons are reading books of many authors on the same subjects would give more information and ideas as they would have handled it in different perspectives. Second, you may find the simplest example with explanation for a particular concept. But in this digital era, one need not go to library to access these books. One can simply log on to Google Books website to access the digital copy of the book. Now, what is important here is what to read and how to select a topic and use these ebooks for reference purposes only. What is an excellent material? Then that part alone need to be taken as printout for future reference. If they develop these skills, they can save time and gain more knowledge on the subject. We need to focus on three basic points to know research methodology: meaning of research, definitions, objectives of research. Now, when it comes to meaning of research, research is a process of finding answers to unsolved problems through application of scientific methods. Research refers to a search for knowledge through objective and systematic method of finding solution to a problem. Now we should look at some definitions of research. According to Webster's International Dictionary, research is a careful critical inquiry or examination in seeking facts or principles. According to Oxford Dictionary, research is a study and investigation of discovered facts. According to Redman and Morey, systematized effort to gain new knowledge is called research. We should focus on some important points of what are the objectives of research. Number one, it is used to discover answers to the questions through the application of scientific procedure. Number two, to discover the hidden truth that hasn't been discovered. Number three, it is used to find frequent occurrence of something, which is known as diagnostic research. Number four, to test a hypothesis. Well, I'm not going into much detail. I just want you to focus on some important points which will let you continue with your work. From this information, it is clear that research is a process for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting information to answer questions. But to qualify as research, the process must have certain characteristics. It must, as far as possible, be controlled, rigorous, systematic, valid, and verifiable, empirical. Now, what is empirical? Empirical is basically based on what is experienced or seen rather than on theory. And it should be also critical. Apart from these important factors, we need to know how do we plan our research? What is planning the research program? After the selection of the topic, I know you all have already selected your topic, you are already working on it. I only want you to put you all into a proper time frame so that you can complete your research, complete your project without much stress. Well, now that the topic has been already selected, the next step is planning the research program. Without a plan, the research student cannot decide what things to do first. In fact, action without planning is blind. While writing a research paper or a thesis, the student is given plenty of time to plan and organize his work. He is given the opportunity to read widely, collect materials sufficiently, take notes systematically, arrange his thoughts logically, and commit them to paper in an acceptable way. A much higher quality of work is expected of him. While it is true that a student writing a thesis or doctoral dissertation may be given advice from time to time by his supervisor, the ultimate responsibility is his. For any fault in the format of the thesis, organization of thought, and delay in submission, he will be blamed. Consequently, once he starts reading around the topic and collecting the materials for it, he soon comes to realize that he has to read extensively and write considerably. He cannot omit important information nor leave out the essential details nor present only part of the evidence. It is therefore necessary that he should follow a time schedule. The total program should be planned in an order that it can be completed in the time allotted. The failure to schedule time usually results in an inferior product. Now, the time frame which I am going to discuss with you all is very important. A suggested allocation of time is as follows. Number one, defining and limiting problem, consulting source material, and collecting information is the 50% of research work. For that, you should allot 15 months. Then the first draft of your thesis should be written. That is 30% of work. For that, you can allot 9 months. Second draft, including footnotes, referencing, and revision of the first draft, is 10% of work, for which you should allot 3 months. Final draft, adding further information and revision of language, is 5% of work, for which you should allot 1.5 months. Then finally, typing and binding, proofreading included, is another 5% of work, for which you should allot 1.5 months. So I repeat, 50% is your defining and limiting problem, consulting source material, and collecting information. 30% of work is your first draft. 10% of your work is second draft, including footnotes, referencing, and revision of the first draft. 5% of your work is final draft, adding further information and revision of language. And finally, typing and binding, which also include proofreading, is 5%. For that, you should allot finally 1.5 months. So I repeat, 15 months plus 9 months plus 3 months plus 1.5 month plus 1.5 month. So this is roughly the time you should allot. I don't say that this is something very final. The researcher may adjust the time allocation according to his or her convenience. Now, after this, I would also like to discuss with you the format of your thesis. Every thesis has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The researcher, while writing a thesis, must show the development of ideas through successive stages. He has also to explain the purpose of research, its usefulness, and the methods adopted in his investigation. The most common format of a thesis is as follows: preface, table of contents, introduction, main body of the thesis, conclusion, appendix, footnotes, bibliography. I repeat: preface, table of contents, introduction, main body of the thesis, conclusion, appendix, footnotes, bibliography. Now, without going into much detail, I will just shortly discuss each one of these. Preface. In the preface, the research student writes the purpose of the thesis and its usefulness. He also makes acknowledgement to different sources from where he has received help. The preface is usually short and hardly covers 3 pages. At the end, the researcher puts his signature, place, and date. Table of contents. After the preface, there is the table of contents that contains the breakup of the thesis into its several parts. That is introduction, the chapters, conclusion, appendix, the bibliography, indicating the pagination. Introduction. The introduction is basically the survey of literature. Here, the researcher discusses in brief the problem, the works done in the past by different scholars, their merits, their drawbacks, and his own hypothesis. The introduction may be numbered as a chapter, but what is important is that it should function as an as it should function as the author of the main body of the thesis. Now comes the chapters. The chapters form the main body of the thesis and contain the arguments, evidence, and the sources of information given in the footnotes. There is no definite number of chapters, but it is the usual practice to divide a thesis into 3 to 4 chapters of short length, say 25 typed pages, and a doctoral dissertation up to 5 to 6 chapters of standard length, say 35 to 40 typed pages. Conclusion. The conclusion is usually short, 10 to 12 typed pages. It must summarize the arguments of the chapters, modify the hypothesis made in the introduction, though it is not always necessary, state the conclusion arrived at on the basis of evidence, and finally evaluate the merit of the text or the author, the merit of the text or the author or the age. The conclusion, as far as possible, should be free from footnotes and quotations. Appendix. Now, what is an appendix? A section at the end of a book, etc., that gives extra information. The appendix includes a brief discussion of some of the points that could not be discussed in the main body of thesis, tables and plates. Nowadays, tables and plates are included in the main body of the thesis. Footnotes. Footnotes, unless specially instructed, should be in the main body of the thesis. They should occur in the page where the quotation is cited or the source is referred to. Well, I always suggest that footnotes are initially required in the first draft, but finally the footnotes should come as references at the end of the chapter. Bibliography. Now, this is very important. The bibliography is always at the end of the thesis. It contains the list of the books and articles in the journals the researcher has consulted. While preparing the bibliography, the research student must not miss the recent books on the subject. Otherwise, his thesis dissertation will apparently look outdated, and in most cases, it is actually outdated in such a case. Besides these, the doctoral dissertation must bear the title, name of the degree for which it is submitted, name of the supervisors with designation, name of the candidate, the university, and the year of submission. The first page of the thesis should replicate the cover page and should be followed by a certificate from the supervisor that it is the own work of the candidate and it is fit for submission in accordance with the provisions of the statutes of the university. All the pages of the thesis dissertation must be numbered. Now, these are the few important points or information which I wanted to share with my research scholars. Well, I have to make one submission in the end that when I said I have been using the pronoun he, but that always includes, when I say he, it also means he or she. Because these days we notice that girl students are more seriously pursuing their research work, and they are very keen on working on their research very sincerely and very seriously. So, to my research scholars, best of luck, and please use your this social distancing time in completing your research, in the sense that first you are working, I know you are working on collecting the material. So please go to the internet, read the e-books, learn to extract the important material, and don't forget to use the references, because once you collect the material and if the references are missing, you will have real tough time again while arranging your chapters. So with each collection of work, referencing should be immediately done. Thank you very much, best of luck, and the given time when we can't meet, we can't sit together, I think this digital learning will be of some use and help to you. Thank you very much.